Alrighty. So thank you guys for coming in on a Friday. So just running through a couple quick demos here, some stuff that I've worked on in my first few weeks here. The first one we'll walk through is using KinD for local Kubernetes development with our Helm chart. So you can do it today with a couple different tools, but I wanted to add KinD to the list. Minikube is good, K3S is good, but KinD is kind of a cool one because it runs entirely in Docker. It's really lightweight. And KinD itself is just a little Go binary, so really quick and easy to install. It's also nice for kind of adding multiple nodes, conceptual nodes to your cluster, because it can stand up multiple containers that will give you kind of a multi-node setup. What's nice about this approach too is that we actually, with some huge help from Jason, got everything running with SSL. So locally, we'll just use self-signed certs, and then that way we can actually get the GitLab runner attached and do full pipeline. So I'll demo that. And then the second one is just a quick demo of printing a deprecation notice in the admin UI from the Rails project. DJ mentioned that might be a part of the code base that some team members haven't seen before. So I wanted to show that off too. So I recorded this part just because it takes a little bit for the Helm chart to fully come up and running. So I figured we'd save some time. So where I'm starting here is that this is a docs preview of the docs that I added for this KinD development. So I put the link in the Google Doc for this meeting if you want to kind of poke through it. So where we're starting is just getting the IP address of my Mac here locally. And we'll use that along with nip.io for kind of simple DNS to route back to that IP address to act as a domain. And then we're just adding a quick repo here. As Gerard mentioned, we actually don't need to add the stable repo. He mentioned that after I recorded this. So I updated the docs, so now you only have to add the GitLab repo itself. So what we're going to do here is first open up the values file for what we're going to deploy for Helm. So as you can see here, the heading we're going to pick is Nginx ingress node port with SSL. So I have a few example files in the repo itself for the Helm chart of there's a config file for Helm with the values YAML, and there's a config file for KinD where you can specify different configuration parameters for your cluster. So the first thing is to start the cluster with that example config after editing your values YAML. So we only have to make one change, just updating your host IP in the values file. I was thinking about doing this on command line, but the command kind of varies per operating system. So just wanted to kind of leave that up to the user. Probably good to be specifically aware of what's happening there too. So you can see in the values file here, I'm just updating the domain to my IP, and then I can just copy paste the KinD create cluster command. In this case, that KinD SSL YAML file is actually just creating a basic cluster, but the one thing we add on there is to expose a specific port to localhost 80 or 443 if you're using SSL in this case. So we basically just pick a high numbered port for Nginx to expose on node port, and then we map that with KinD so it's actually exposed locally. That way we get full routing capability since Nginx is doing some routing under the hood rather than just port forwarding the web service pod specifically. So down here, I just created a namespace just for good practice and switched to it with Kubernetes. I don't use it often, so I actually still was in the habit of tacking on -n for the rest of the commands. But we're just installing the Helm chart with that values file that we edited earlier. Now I'm just watching the deployment in K9S. So the first step, what we're waiting for here to happen is that we want to get the root CA. So we're going to wait for that secret to get deployed. So you can skip ahead a little bit here. So there's that wildcard TLS CA secret that popped up. So we'll go back and grab that and save it locally. You can just copy and paste that command too. Just got to change it so that the file name comes out to be your host IP. And we'll show that just to show the contents of it. So there's the root CA. And then optional, of course, but I like to add the root CA to my local machine so it doesn't complain about insecure certs locally. So this just shows adding it to that system keychain for Mac. Of course, it might change if you're on Linux. then what I do is just open up the keychain access on Mac just to automatically trust it for local development. Cool. So now we have the root CA saved locally and trusted, and we have the CA saved locally, and we'll use that for the runner in a second here. So I'll skip past some of this. This is just waiting for the pods to come up. And then as we wait on that, I'll pull up the domain so we have it ready. And as we're waiting on that, I just went ahead and connected the GitLab runner while we're waiting for the rest of the cluster to come up. So what we do is we already have the root CA, so now we'll just grab the cert too, so we can make the chain. So you can copy and paste that command, just add in your IP and namespace if you need to. And we'll print that out and just showing that it came through successfully. And then just cat both of them out into a new file called chain.cert. And we'll show that as well, just to show that they successfully got merged. And then we can create a secret called self-signed cert. That's what I've hard-coded it to in the file there, but of course the end user could change that to whatever they like. So I create that self-signed cert. In this case, the runner docs specify that it should match the domain. So that's why we have that syntax to specify the name of it first and then provide the file that contains the cert chain. And then we wait. So I'll zoom forward here to get into the point where the web service is running. All right, so those are up. So now I can just load the page. I didn't click to see the cert in the demo, but you can see at the top left there that there's the secure lock icon. I didn't get any warning about the certs. I'm just using K9S to easily grab the root password. And here's the logs for the runner. So you can see it was successfully registered. So just to show it's all working, I just create a new project here called demo. And then I'll add one of our template CI files. Just use bash. And that's added. So then that should have kicked off CI. So I'll go into the CI/CD section, click on the pipeline. You can see at the bottom it received the job and job succeeded. There's the successful pipeline. The rest of it just kind of shows the rest of the pipeline running, but you can see there the pipeline happened on one of the GitLab runner pods. So that's the flow. This is one of the methods that we have for deploying KinD locally. We also have an option with no SSL. So basically just disable cert manager and expose port 80 on KinD instead of 443. So we just access it with HTTP. In that case, you can access it just like that. Of course, the Helm chart's really hoping, in Jason's words, really trying to use SSL. So this method's probably the easiest and follows best practices, but that method's there as well. And then if you are on Linux, it actually becomes a lot easier. You can actually just port forward the Nginx pod locally, since in Mac OS, Docker actually runs in a VM. So we need this kind of layer in between of exposing a port with KinD. But on Linux, there's some instructions there that are a little bit easier. The MR is linked in the doc too. So if you want to see the rest of the examples or any of the documentation, you can poke in there. I have it up and running locally too, if you guys have any questions on that one.
The only question I have, so this looks awesome. Thanks, Mitch. The only question I have is, did you guys also manage to get the SSH port working for GitLab Shell, or was that not covered?
I haven't worked with that yet, so I didn't test it. Is that something I could test here locally? Because I have it fully running if we want to try something.
Yeah, I think it would be just a matter. Probably you would have had to in your kind have exposed it. I don't know
Yeah,
if you guys did expose something other than 443 or not.
just 443 right now. But what I could do after the demo is just expose that and try to, I could just clone the repo and try to push a change, right? And that would confirm it.
Yeah, using SSH. Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah, that's the only follow-up question I have there.
Awesome. And to show you that would be, what we can do is do KinD SSL. So here's where that, I'll blow it up a little bit. Here's where that container port, this is the port we chose for Nginx on HTTPS, and we map that locally to 443. So I could just add a port here for 22 and see how that goes. So I'll test that after the demo if that sounds good.
Yeah. Yeah, and it might not go very smoothly. We'll have to see. Depends on how that port 22 is, what is being used for by KinD, I guess.
Yeah. Okay. Sounds good. Any other questions on that one?
No, I think that looked really good. Thanks, Mitch.
Cool. Thanks, guys. Hopefully that helps. And the next one's pretty quick. So this is the part of the code base where we can print deprecation notices in the admin control panel. So it's pretty straightforward. If you look at the MR, there's a controller. And so effectively what we do, there's already kind of one for, I think it was for Puma. So I was able to mirror some of this against that, but effectively we just add this external database checker, and we have this DB version deprecated method, and it will return true if the version is less than 11. And if that's true, then it will print this warning out, and we can actually print the current version of the database in the message so they know how far behind they are. And then there's the test to go along with it. And then here we can just kind of append to that notices array to print those out. So the way that works is all I had to do was stand up GDK locally. And so this is kind of showing that part of the code base and then where we append the notices to the message. So what I'm going to do here, instead of checking if my database is less than 11, since locally with GDK, I think it's running 11.7, rather than switching out my database to prove it, I'll just force this method to return true. So it is deprecated, and that should trigger this warning. So I'll just kind of let GDK restart here. You can see up here, there's no message today in the admin area. And once it's reloaded, now we see a message. So we can see Postgres 11 will become the minimum required Postgres version in May. Postgres 9.6 and 10 will no longer be supported in GitLab 13. Please consider upgrading your Postgres version, and then it'll print your version right there. So that one's pretty straightforward, but it was kind of cool to see how those messages actually get populated in the admin UI.
Yeah, that is cool. Out of curiosity, if you were to change line 10 to say 12 instead of 11 and not put the true in there, would it work?
Yeah, it would work. I can show that too, actually, since it's running. So I'll just change that to if it's less than 12, which would be true because it's on 11.7. So I'll do GDK start. I left it down because I figured if I'm running my KinD cluster and sharing on Zoom and running GDK, my computer might melt. So something that was new for me too, that I got some feedback in the MR is, for example, this deprecated version method. I guess it's Ruby best practice not to actually type out return in the method, which is something I hadn't seen before. So I find it kind of weird, but I guess it makes for less code to read. Just some Ruby magic. All right, we'll go to the admin area. And there's the message.
Awesome.
Guess you can dismiss it too. Yeah, there it goes. Cool. Any other questions?
Oh, good stuff, man.
Awesome. Thank you, guys.
Cool. Have a great weekend, everyone.